Welcome back to the channel. This will be the transfer tips for Blank Gameweek 34, where I highlight 11 players to buy, hold, sell and skip, and also a 1-week punt. And you could even classify some of the purchases this week as specifically designed for Blank Gameweek 34. Matheus Cunha is currently the most transferred in player this week, and you've also got Mbeumo, Nuri, Barnes and Viss in the top 5. Some of these players will be covered in today's video, but also some lower owned players and those that you might not be thinking about on the free hit or of your normal transfers to buy specifically for Blank Gameweek 34, but they could really help you rise up the ranks in many leagues this week and also have a very strong end to the Premier League season. Smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. If you enjoy my content, our aim is to get this to 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards new goals like 33,000 subscribers. Keep your eyes peeled for the best free hit team video and also my team selection because yes, I have activated the free hit. That is my only chip left, and there could also be a best wildcard squad if you want to see it and try to tackle Blank Gameweek 34 whilst also having a solid platform from Gameweek 35 until the end of the campaign. Follow me on X, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, and check all the links in the description for the FPL and FPL Challenge Leagues, my Spotify, Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. All of that can be found in the description. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. One of the best assets in FPL this season has undoubtedly been Bryan Mbeumo. He is the second player to have reached 200 points in this game after Mohamed Salah, and he got 18 points against Brighton. He is such a consistent asset and he's completely fixture proof. He does face Nottingham Forest next and he only has 1 goal in 8 appearances against them in the Championship and Premier League. So you could argue that Gameweek 35 is the best time to buy Bryan Mbeumo, but perhaps Nottingham Forest could have one eye on the FA Cup semi-final, rotate a little bit, or at least have the minutes managed, because I think their fitness levels could maybe face a bit of a challenge there because they've got such an important game at Wembley. And then they face Brentford, which will be very tough for them as they are also looking to finish in the top 5 and qualify for the Champions League this season. So I do think that Nottingham Forest will still go quite strong in the Premier League, but I do think they could maybe have some issues kind of navigating the FA Cup and the Premier League there. But Mbeumo has 18 goals and 7 fantasy assists, an XGI figure of 18.99 and 210 FPL points. No wonder his ownership is so high at 32.7%, and it is increasing steadily, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets to 35% by the deadline. But on the free hit, I don't think Bryan Mbeumo will be that popular, and I understand because Nottingham Forest have been one of the best teams in the Premier League this season, but Mbeumo can do it against anybody. He has registered 19 big chances, 16 big chance created, 63 key passes, and all the stats are pretty solid. 71 shots. I think Mbeumo is the best Brentford asset. I know Vissa is another one to definitely look at, and I wouldn't mind going for both of them from Gameweek 35 until the end of the season. Matheus Cunha is the flavour of Blank Gameweek 34. He is the most transferred in player, as I showed you towards the beginning of this podcast, and he is facing Leicester at home, who have just been relegated after their 1-0 loss against Liverpool, and Wolves have won 5 consecutive games across all competitions, and they beat Man United 1-0 at Old Trafford, and Matheus Cunha started for the first time since a suspension which happened in the FA Cup, and I think Matheus Cunha is a brilliant FPL asset. Now, he can have some issues with the yellow cards and also the odd suspensions. We have seen that on multiple occasions, but I think he also vastly outperforms the stats, so the underlying numbers aren't that important with players like Matheus Cunha, who can be brilliant finishers at times, and he's got 14 goals, 5 assists, 38 bonus points, which is right up there with the likes of Chris Wood. He is what you call a talismanic figure for Wolves, and the fixtures are quite decent from now until Gameweek 38, but that Gameweek 34 fixture in particular against Leicester at home, that is what really stands out. I wouldn't mind starting Cunha against Man City, Brighton and Crystal Palace, and of course Brentford is also quite decent for attackers, but you're really buying Cunha for Gameweek 34 and then you could rotate him from time to time, but he is the sort of player who can do it against absolutely anybody, and he has scored against virtually every single Premier League team over the last 2 seasons, and he is going to be linked with many clubs in the summer. But looking at his stats specifically, 89 shots is very impressive, but the XG is only 6.81, which might surprise you because he has scored 14 goals. The expected assist is 5.1, which in my opinion is very decent for a striker. Only 6 big chances, 12 big chance created and 47 key passes. So when you look at Cunha, the creativity looks really good and sustainable. And with the goals, you could argue he is vastly outperforming it. And maybe going into Gameweek 34, he could maybe fail to deliver for those that are looking to bring him in on the free hit or with free transfers. But something else to think about is that Bellegarde missed out against Man United, and that opened the door for Matheus Cunha to get back into that side, because Vitor Pereira said very recently that he doesn't want to change a winning formula, and he spoke with Cunha and made him understand that he has to work his way back into the team and he won't get into that lineup immediately. But I still think Cunha will start against Leicester. That's why he is a purchase in this video. But maybe you'd be interested in Strand Larsen or doubling up on that Wolves forward line. Another Wolves player I would highly recommend for Blank Gameweek 34 is Reine Nouri, so you could classify him as a 1 week punt. I think from now until Gameweek 38, I'd rather buy Matheus Cunha, because I could see myself benching Nouri against Man City away, Brighton at home, and probably in the other 2 fixtures as well. But Nouri does have that attacking potential. He got a goal and an assist against Tottenham Hotspur very recently, and he also kept a clean sheet against Man United, but got booked in that game as well. But 4 goals and 6 assists is very impressive for a fullback. And I know Nouri has had his injury problems throughout the years, and he can be a frustrating FPL asset, but I think he's worth the extra millions over the other Wolves defenders like Agbadou. But then again, if you don't have the funds, he is a decent alternative, and you might want to go for Bentley in goal as your second goalkeeper if Jose Sarr remains injured. He also missed out against Man United in double Gameweek 33. But Nouri has 109 FPL points and he costs 4.9 million. His stats are pretty decent across the board. Nothing spectacular, but 3 big chances, 7 big chance created, 35 key passes, and the XG is 2.31. You can also see a solid expected assist figure of 3.32. I think Wolves are definitely worth the investment defensively, because Leicester, more often than not, struggle to score goals, and I could see Wolves winning 1 or 2-0 at the very least, and Reine Nouri could also get an attacking return to add on top of it. Bukayo Saka was subbed off in the 57th minute mark against Ipswich Town, and somehow he didn't get a single attacking return. He missed a big chance, created 7 chances overall, and also a big opportunity, and he just wasn't able to get on the score sheet or get an assist. For the first 2 goals Arsenal scored, he got the pass before the assist, which doesn't translate to any points whatsoever. So for him to get 1 point so far is very frustrating, and he also suffered that horrendous challenge by Leif Davis, who was sent off, and that also caused some concerns about Saka playing in the second game of double Gameweek 33, and also if he's going to be available for future weeks, including that crucial game against PSG in the Champions League semi-finals. But Mikel Arteta was very confident after the game, and he said the following: he was a bit sore, but it's nothing serious, so it's good. So that is a very positive update there on Bukayo Saka, who should be fine to play against Crystal Palace. But I have to say, I think his minutes will be managed there, and the main priority will be the Champions League. Arsenal blank in 34, but if you have a very solid structure and you're able to keep Saka by free hitting this week, or just having Saka on your bench and a solid 11 in his place, I think he's worth keeping against Bournemouth at home, Liverpool away, Newcastle at home, and definitely for Southampton away. I could see Saka doing very well in those home games. The only fixture I look at and think he could probably blank is Liverpool away, but I still think Arsenal can cause problems in that game, which won't mean anything by that stage. But Saka's had very good stats throughout the season, particularly with the creativity. The goal scoring has been a bit underwhelming, only 6 goals, 6 big chances, and the XG doesn't really stack up to the expected assists and the big chance created, which is 20. That is by far the best stat that Saka has to offer, and he's got a combination of goals and assists in his game, which he has really shown in the last couple of seasons. But I think the assist does stand out over the goal scoring, which he does need to improve at in future campaigns. But I think Saka is worth holding on to, and let's keep an eye out for his fitness. Marmoush also blanks in Gameweek 34, but he's worth keeping for sure. And if I had to pick one of Marmoush or Saka, let's say, I know they're playing different positions and their price tags are also in a different kind of section, I would still recommend keeping Marmoush instead, because he only costs 7.7 million and he faces Wolves at home and Southampton away, which looks very appealing to say the least. And Man City could double in 36, then blank in 37. So you could do something like keeping Marmoush until that blank game week and then sell Marmoush for the last 2 game weeks of this season. But that's all hypothetical, and it depends on which teams reach the FA Cup final and then they will blank in 37, as well as their scheduled opponents, and double in 36 instead. But Marmoush has 6 goals and 1 assist in just a matter of 11 appearances, and his XG is 4.61, 7 big chances, and even the creativity is okay, with 5 big chances created, and Marmoush has done very well in Haaland's absence, who is still going to be out for the next couple of weeks as well, by the way. So Marmoush offers tremendous value there. He was disappointing against Everton. Man City won 2-0, and neither De Bruyne nor Marmoush produced a single attack in return, but I would recommend keeping the Egyptian until Game Week 37 at the very least. Timing is crucial in Fantasy Premier League in terms of when you buy, hold, sell or skip players, which is where these transfer tips videos come in handy, and Chris Wood was highlighted as a sell several weeks ago, but if you still have him, I'd highly recommend keeping him until maybe the end of the season, because Nottingham Forest have great fixtures. My only concern is that for Blank Gameweek 34, Chris Wood could have his minutes managed, or maybe his fitness levels and the match sharpness won't quite be there, because he has missed quite a few games recently through an injury, and Awani is still suffering with a problem. But Chris Wood has been brilliant for the first half of the campaign, and he's been one of the standout strikers in the Premier League this season, with 18 goals, 3 assists, 37 bonus points. I think Chris Wood and Cunha stand out as bonus points machines and talismanic figures, but Chris Wood needs to up his game, I think, in FPL. I know the injury played a big part, but he was blanking even before that even happened, and he's got 176 points for the campaign. His ownership remains quite high at 25.4%, and his stats are solid across the board, but nothing special. I have seen some people complain about Chris Wood defying the stats, and he doesn't really make much sense because he has scored 18 goals from an XG stat of 10.75, and he's had 22 big chances, but on the whole, only 53 shots and 32 shots on target. He has been extremely clinical this season, and I'd be surprised if he can match these numbers and also this campaign coming up in the next season. But you never know in football. He has been brilliant for Nottingham Forest, who are still on the cusp of a special season in the FA Cup semi-final and competing for those Champions League spots for next season. So I think Chris Wood is worth holding on to for at least Blank Gameweek 34. Having said that, I don't feel the same way about Jean-Philippe Mateta, who blanks in 34, and Crystal Palace's fixtures are quite mixed bag. I know they face Wolves at home in Game Week 37, which looks quite good in the fixture difficulty rating on the Fantasy Premier League website, but I think Mateta is worth selling right now, and you could go to Messias Cunha for Blank Gameweek 34, or perhaps Chris Wood if you want better long-term fixtures. But Mateta has 13 goals and 2 assists this season, and he was doing really well in 2025 until that injury in the FA Cup against Millwall, and then he scored in Game Week 31 against Brighton, and I had him for that specific game week, but against Southampton he blanked, and he also got 2 1-pointers in double Game Week 32, not to mention another early substitution in double Game Week 33 against Bournemouth. So it has been really up and down with Mateta, and unfortunately I think that injury did halt his momentum, which was hinted at by the manager Oliver Glasner, so that is definitely a concern. Now, could Mateta score against Forest, Tottenham, Wolves and Liverpool? Absolutely. He has been one of the best strikers in the Premier League for the last year or two, and I don't think he's a must-sell per se, but I'd rather keep Marmoush when you look at a combination of form, fixtures, match sharpness. You've also got Alexander Isak, not to mention Cunha and Chris Wood. So I think Mateta has fallen down the pecking order in terms of the best forwards in FPL, and Crystal Palace, their form has completely dropped off a cliff. So if you've got a triple up like me, I think it's worth trimming it down to 1 or 2 assets, and in some cases you might want to go without any Crystal Palace asset from now until the end of the season. But Mateta has 26 big chances, an XG figure of 12.16 and 61 shots, so he has good underlying stats, and he's also been fairly consistent throughout most of the season. But the recent drop-off from Crystal Palace and Mateta would definitely point you towards selling him. Similar logic applies to Ismail Assar, who is very cheap and he could be worth keeping as your 5th midfielder, but you have a plethora of options at a similar price tag like Morgan Rogers, who blanks in 34, just like Ismail Assar, but you've also got Kluivert, who I think could do very well against Man United, not to mention a few others at a similar price tag who I have covered in my best wildcard team videos. Jacob Murphy has been outstanding, and he's a great option for Blank Gameweek 34 against Ipswich Town at home, but Sarr I think is probably more of a sell than a hold right now, with Crystal Palace having that lack of form, some pretty mixed bag fixtures, and Sarr has been, I'd say, reasonably inconsistent. I know he's cheap and he's got great underlying stats, but I think apart from Game Week 27 to 28, he has really been quite underwhelming, especially in the double game week so far. Let's see if he can do something against Arsenal on Wednesday night. but he has 7 goals and 5 fantasy assists, and it seems to be like most of his returns have come against Aston Villa this season. His XG is 8.31, and that has resulted in 126 FPL points. His ownership is going down steadily, and it's currently 10.7%, and all the numbers are quite good. 18 big chances, 13 big chance created, 36 key passes, and the expected assist is 5.55, but I think his quality in front of goal and in the final third has been lacking at times. The decision making has also been poor on several occasions. When he gets it right, I think Sarr has a really high ceiling and he can be worth the investment. But right now, with Crystal Palace blanking in 34 and having some tough fixtures on top of some poor form, I think Ismaila Sarr is a sell. Another streaky player is Marcus Rashford, who looked really impressive against PSG, and you could argue that Unai Emery subbing him off was quite a strange decision. And you also look at Ollie Watkins not starting games recently until that great return against Newcastle, and I just think Aston Villa's attacking depth does lead to a lot of their assets being avoidable in FPL. That includes Watkins up front, who's brilliant for double game week 33, but maybe longer term he is more of a sell and a skip, and I think his minutes could be managed and also rotated with Marcus Rashford. So if you do have the Man United loanee, I think Rashford is worth selling. He has 5 goals and 4 assists this season, only 14 shots on target and 87 FPL points. But Aston Villa blank this week. Their fixtures are quite mixed bag. I think they've got a great chance of finishing in those Champions League qualification spots. They're in an FA Cup semi-final. But with all of that, the congested schedule, the depth in the attacking areas and the rotation, I just don't think Rashford is really worth keeping. And you've also got Morgan Rogers, who is going to offer you that guarantee of starts, and he could be a perfect 8th attacker, so to speak, and you can rotate with your third forward and you can introduce him when you need him. And with the likes of Marcus Rashford, he won't be that reliable in terms of the minutes. So I think he's worth selling. The same goes for Marco Asensio and virtually every single Aston Villa player except Morgan Rogers and possibly Ollie Watkins. I'm fairly torn about this one because Iwobi can be a brilliant option for Blank Gameweek 34, facing Southampton away, and even in other fixtures like Everton at home, his former club. And you might also want a Fulham attacker to target that Southampton defence. So Raul Jimenez up front, if Rodrigo Muniz is injured, that would be a great third forward and enabler on your free hit, or perhaps as part of your free transfers. And Iwobi is very similar, but in the midfield this time. He has 9 goals, 5 assists, 52 key passes and 144 FPL points, and he only costs 5.5 million. The ownership is very low at 4.9%, so I don't think he's like a must skip and someone you have to avoid like the plague, because I think Iwobi can offer some great value, but I think Southampton could cause some problems to Fulham, and they actually showed this early in the season in that goalless draw at Craven Cottage, and there could be better budget midfielders, perhaps even Justin Kluivert, who has a more difficult fixture on paper against Man United at home. I think that could be the sort of player who can really make the difference to your free hit or as part of your free transfers to target Blank Gameweek 34 specifically. But Iwobi is still worth considering, and if you really want that Fulham attacker, I think Iwobi is still a decent pick as your 5th midfielder. The same goes for Jimenez up front, and you've also got Sessegnon at the back. And one big dilemma on the free hit, for example, would be Robinson versus Sessegnon, who played as a right winger and assisted Iwobi's goal against Chelsea, which opened the scoring. So I think Fulham have a lot of interesting options for Blank Gameweek 34, and Iwobi is one of the better ones. If you are searching for a 1-week punt in the midfield, perhaps you're wildcarding in 35 and just want to tackle what's right in front of you, or you're free hitting, I think Luis Diaz could be a great option. I think Liverpool wrap up the league in style against Tottenham Hotspur, and Diaz scored a brace against them earlier this season, and before that game against Leicester, he had returned it in 5 consecutive games, and I think he played fairly well against the Foxes. But on the whole, Diaz is very inconsistent. He started the season brilliantly and then had a period of 10 game weeks and 2 attacking returns, so it's either feast or famine with the Colombian. He has 11 goals, 7 assists, 20 big chances and 165 FPL points. I think Liverpool are one of those teams that are worth tripling up on for Blank Gameweek 34. You go for a defender like Trent, Konate or Van Dijk, and then you go for Salah and Luis Diaz in the midfield, or perhaps even Cody Gakpo. There could be an issue with minutes, and maybe that is the biggest kind of challenge and obstacle with the Colombian here. So there is an element of risk with this pick. But if the lineups do indicate he's going to start, and we've got a good feeling about Diaz in that 11, I think he's definitely worth the investment as a 1 week punt. I'm not as infused about him in the other games against Chelsea away, Arsenal at home, Brighton away, and Crystal Palace at home. But if he can continue this momentum and end the season very strongly, then Diaz has the ability to return in all of these games. But I think the lack of consistency is a big issue. Then you have the minutes and also the depth that Liverpool have in those attacking areas. But Diaz, more often than not, is first choice. He can play as a left winger or also down the middle. And against Tottenham Hotspur, I think a massive return could be on the cards. That is all for today. The transfer tips for Blank Gameweek 34 has been covered with 11 players highlighted to buy, hold, sell and skip. You can see the most transferred out players on screen. That includes Jean-Philippe Mateta, Marmoush, Joao Pedro, who is suspended for the next couple of games. You've also got Munoz and Saka in the top 5, and some of these players have been covered, not just in today's video, but also in recent Transfer Tips podcasts, best wildcard team videos, team selections, and much more. Keep your eyes peeled for the free hit squad, and if you want to see a wildcard video, then let me know down in the comment section below, and like this video. Let's get it to over 100 at the very least, and also push on towards new goals like 33,000 subscribers. You can also follow me on X, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, and check all the other links in the description for my Patreon and the championships, for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, FPL and FPL Challenge Leagues can also be found in the description. The same goes for Spotify as well. A huge shout out goes to Napstars and Paredes for gifting multiple memberships in the last couple of deadline streams. I think it's 30 now over the last 2 in UCL Fantasy and in FPL this weekend. So a big up to you. The same goes to all members, patrons, subscribers, commenters, and those that tune into every single video and live stream. I'll see you very soon for more FPL and UCL Fantasy content, which will return next week.